Welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast. I hope the socks fit, the scarf is keeping you warm, and if you've got something fishy, I hope you get to use it soon. I've eaten too much, the river I want to fish is too high, and at the moment, I'm just biding my time. So on to today's guest. Have you ever dreamed of living as far off grid as possible in today's world? Alex Brown left the city to live in the mountains of Spain, where he fishes the streams, travels in his camper van, and edits his own independent magazine, Advanture. Alex, it's great to have you along on the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I got some nice warm fluffy socks for Christmas, which I have on actually. So I'm enjoying those. My feet are toasty because it's cold up here.
I bet it is, and it's great to know that they're getting their first outing on the podcast as well. So perhaps my introduction was well informed in some respects or others. But for listeners, can you tell us where you're based?
Yeah, I am in the Pyrenees on the Spanish side, a small town called Puigcerdá, which is about 2 hours, 2.5 hours if you've got a slow vehicle like I do. North of Barcelona, so it's right on the border with France. Actually, we've got the 1 kilometre to France sign just outside of our building here, and we can walk over into France, go and get croissant, and come home.
That's very, very civilised indeed. And what does that mean then from a fishing perspective?
So what we've got here is, it's a complete mountain environment. So actually around the town, we've got 6 ski resorts within 30 minutes. And that's not that they're so far, it's because the roads are windy, so really in close proximity. So obviously we're surrounded by mountains, which have all got streams coming out of them of different sizes, flowing both north and south, so onto the French plains and then down to the south into Spain. We've got one of the major rivers here, the River Segre. So its source is, I'm not sure how far, it's probably only about 15, 16 kilometres away from my place here. The source is up on the French side. And it turns into one of the biggest major rivers in Spain, which flows out into the Mediterranean down, where is it? South of Tarragona it comes out, isn't it?
I think so, yes.
I think so, yeah. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's a wonderful mountain environment here, but you've got that Mediterranean, temperate climate, basically. So whilst I wish we had a little bit more snow than what we do get for the skiing side of things. It's nice. It's a very pleasant atmosphere, to say the least. It's very comfortable.
That sounds very, very civilised. And from a fishing point of view, does that mean that you've got a stream pretty damn close to where you live?
Yeah, we do. So again, the Segre being our major river, I can see the bank from my office window here, basically, or the line of trees at least, and I would say it's 1 kilometre away. So that is the very uppermost section of the Spanish reach, basically, before it crosses over into France. Then we do have, are you aware of the enclave, Yvia? It's a small, isolated pocket of Spain that is completely surrounded by France. It's in France. It's a small commune that, when they divided the north and south, or made the boundary, they split the towns and villages up, and this small town happened to be on the French side. And the river goes out Spain into France, and then back into Spain in this enclave, and then back into France. It's worth checking out on the map. It's quite interesting.
Nice. I like the sound of that. And so does that mean that you're being so close to a river? Does that mean that you choose your moments that you go and fish, and you'll say, right, okay, it feels good, it feels nice, or I've got a window that I've got a few hours? Is that how your fishing works for you?
I am a father of a 3-year-old, and my fishing doesn't quite work out like that. I used to, we've been living up here in the mountains, my partner and I and our child. We've been here for just over 2 years. Before that, we lived in Barcelona, and I fished a different section, also in the county of Girona. So we're in Catalonia in Spain. That's like our region, and then the department that we live in now is Girona. Girona's got some fantastic fishing, but yeah, with regards to picking and choosing the days, I would this year next year, 2025. I think I'm going to be a little bit more able to get out more because my daughter, she's in kindergarten now. She's able to stay there all day, so I've got a little bit more free time. Let's put it like that. But yeah, we've got a few rivers. Yeah, all within again 30 minutes. You can drive to a number of different rivers on the French and the Spanish side. But then we've only got Andorra around the corner as well. So that's how close where we are. Sorry, in the Pyrenees, as Andorra is about 45 minutes away. And again, it's just a bit mountainous, so it takes a little bit of time to get there. It's not distance so far. But yeah, we're on this little boundary of the three countries here. And Andorra, although I haven't fished there, I speak to a couple of guides there. It looks very good. A lot of high lakes, and I'm very keen to get. Have you been to Andorra for your fishing?
Interestingly, we've had a piece in the magazine about fishing the lakes in Andorra and the climb into them, which sounds really, really interesting. And where I go to in Spain, Oliana, is on the road there to Andorra. And we thought when we go next year that we might just poke our noses in just to have a little bit of a go and have a look and say we've caught a fish somewhere else as well. Hopefully have caught a fish somewhere else. So
it is very close, where you go actually to the south entrance into Andorra there. That south entrance is 40 kilometres from where I live, just along the valley, and then it joins up to the south of Andorra there. Yeah, very close.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. And can you describe, you're talking about mountains, you're talking about being able to see the river from your office there. Can you describe the size of the river? Because I know the Segre a little bit, and for me, I guess it's a little bit further down, so the river's a little bit bigger. But can you describe it for listeners so they can picture the sort of place that you're visiting when you get to go fishing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know Oliana, where you mentioned you go, it's already really wide. It's a big piece of water down there. So up here, in the summer, it's about ankle deep, and you wade across it. I don't know if that's called wading, but you can. The local people, they all go and dip in the river there just to cool off. It gets tiny up here. We've been in a drought for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. We've had a very strong drought in this sort of region, Mediterranean region. So that's not just in Spain, that's on the French side as well. It got really dire. A lot of the reservoirs that have been, man-made ones, got to the point of drying up. They were below 5% level, I think. These are bodies of water that supply places like Barcelona with all their water. And they were transporting fish out, relocating them across Spain, trout. It was a disaster on that front. So we have had very small, low rivers for a few years in the winter. I mean, it should have snowed a lot more than it has in the last years, but the drought continued through the winter as well. So that's obviously less snowfall. It got a bit dire actually. But things picked up last year. We had a lot of rain across spring, summer. The winter kicked off quite nice, so it's looking good moving forward. I think it's also a regional pattern. The more we've kind of settled in here, spoke to a few local people and just learned more about the region. It's, I think it's a lot of people would kind of jump on the old global warming and talk about that, but there's also regional patterns in a place like this that people, especially like on a farming level, that's who we're learning from. Tell us about. So our rivers here, anyway, they're small. The Segre does open up not too far. I'd say about 10 kilometers downstream, and it can get to. You can't wade across it. Especially when there's a bit of flow. It's probably chest or above deep. Quite wide, not as big as down near Oliana. But then the places I like to go is more so on the French side. We've got these smaller, like spring creeks coming out, and they're delightful. it's my idea of fishing is here. You've got a snow peak mountain down the end of the, at the end of the river, sorry, at the head of the river. There's nice trees going down. It's a little bit small. It's a lot more kind of nymph fishing here. I would say that's probably a bit more go-to. You still got room to cast like a dry fly rod around, but it gets small pretty quickly up here. And yeah, it's just really picturesque. It's really nice. It's as I said, it's my idea of what I wanted to get out of fly fishing, for example. It's lovely. And I got triggered in New Zealand when I lived there. So I have this vision of somebody fishing on the river up there. And yeah, I was like, that's what I want to do. And anyway, I think it's here. Yeah.
You had me at Spring Creek, which sounds absolutely amazing. And what are you catching up there? Is it brown trout mainly? Is it just brown trout?
It's mostly brown trout. There are a few on the French side. There's a few higher alpine lakes that have got brook trout in them. They were obviously transported over in the early 1900s. From what I can find online, there's really not a lot. I've looked, but yeah, it's mostly brown trout here. I don't think there are actually any rainbow trout in this region. It's very natural. It's only a couple of the French lakes that are stocked. Otherwise, it's all wild. Especially on the Spanish side, it's all wild. So, as I said, we're in Girona, the region, but we're on the mountainous side. If you going south, you cross the pre-Pyrenees and get back onto the kind of normal plain south of the mountains. There's another river that flows through Girona, the city, called the River Ter. I'm not sure if you've heard of this one. That is wonderful. That's where I learned to fish. And that has got, I think it still does, because we had this drought, really healthy population, brown trout, rainbow trout. I caught a lovely coloured up rainbow trout in there one day. Really nice, bit bigger of a river as well, a bit more flow. You've got some options here. It's really nice, and it's very accessible.
And does that mean for you that the perfect day is wandering up into the mountains with just yourself for company, your thoughts, and trying to find a fish or two as you wander along?
That is my idea. Time is the factor there, but I have been able to get out for a few like backpacking trips. I shot through the magazine. We had some equipment sent to us just over a year ago, I think. Some tents, some sleeping bags. So I took the opportunity to stuff it all in a backpack and hike out to one of these lakes on the French side, sleep out for the night, and make a fire and fill it with as much fish in. And you've got that opportunity here, and that is my idea of a good day out fishing. But equally now, in my van I keep all my kit, and I can drop my daughter off and quickly nip down to the river if it's looking good, and cast the line. So it's nice. Just feels more of like a way of life up here. Just like if you got a mountain bike and you could pick that up and just whiz out the door and go on a nice trail. I think having a fly rod in there, if you're that way inclined, it's just really nice to be able to get out in this environment and appreciate it, really, when we catch fish or not,
It strikes me that the outdoors is incredibly important to you. And did fly fishing slot into that quite nicely then? And that's how that came about with the lifestyle that you lead, the van life, the outdoor. Is that how that all worked?
Yeah, you know what? So kind of a bit backtracking, but when I was younger, my dad and my older brother, they were huge into their carp fishing. And so my older brother is about 6-7 years older than I am. And I was never, I was too young to be taken out on these trips, or that was a thing that they did. And I was never interested in fishing. I can remember like the garage being full of rods and tackle bags and all this, but just never triggered me. I was doing a lot of kiteboarding in my teens, so that was kind of what I was into. But then when was this? I think it was about 2013. I was living in New Zealand, and it's when I first saw fly fishing in person. And as I said, I left this picture in my mind, and that I think that I think the way I get into things is like I tried my hand at a lot of different sports. Kiteboarding, I went really heavy in my teens. I become a professional, traveled all around the world, and I ate, slept, did everything kiteboarding. I just was crazy for it. But very quickly, or within a couple of years, I found out there's so much out there that I want to do. But I can't apply myself like I did to kiteboarding on all these different things. So trail running, cycling, swimming, now fishing, skiing. And I thought, I just want to kind of be able to do everything at a nice level, an enjoyable level. The sports that lean into having a bit of fitness, that's good because that benefits you. Things like fishing, you're understanding the environment, you're learning about the ecology and the nature and stuff like that. That's good. That ticks those boxes. So I think when it comes to fishing, it was like, I just want to be able to do it, enjoy it, and understand it, and use it as like one of these things that you kind of build up your knowledge over years and years and years. That's kind of what talks to me about fishing. It's like a little slice of who you are, I think. And it's super relaxing.
And do you think it is as well, because there isn't, like, let's use golf as an example, there isn't, you've got to go around in a course and try and better or equal your handicap or other things where they're competitive. It doesn't, with fly fishing, it doesn't really matter, does it? And the fish can be a very happy byproduct. Is that one of the attractions for you as well?
Yeah, I think, it is. Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I think just being out on a nice day is, in this environment, is really, really relaxing. Like going back to kind of the other sports I do, I was doing a lot of trail running a few years ago, before my daughter was born. And I was trying to get good. I entered a few races. But one thing I remember from all my trail running was, again, up in the mountains, is actually I was generating more ideas up here for work and all my projects by running, and I just couldn't switch off. It was really strange. But it was enjoyable and pleasurable, but I was still thinking. And I think when I got into fishing, fly fishing, I moved from snagging trees to landing the fly in the water. It became relaxing. All of a sudden, you're like, almost laser focused, aren't you, on what you're doing, especially when it's calm and quiet. It might be a nice morning or a late evening. And it's actually the first thing I've picked up where it like really calmed the mind and I could just actually tune out. I don't know if it sounds funny or not, but something like running or skiing, you can't tune out, or I can't when I'm doing one of those sports. But fishing is super relaxing.
That's a really interesting point, because you say about clearing the mind, yet you're concentrating, and you could easily switch your mind to something. And I find the same with fishing, that I don't think about anything else. And I'm sure many of the listeners are exactly the same as well. Yet I think and you say about the ideas, and I know our careers are slightly similar in many respects, but when I walk the dog in the morning is when I get a chance to clean out everything and think things through. So I have an hour and 15 minutes of, right, I need to do this, I should do that, oh, I need to call that person, that's done. It hadn't struck me until you said that when I'm fishing, I just don't think about those things at all. And it is I don't know where that comes from, or because it could easily just as likely happen, but it doesn't. I just can't figure out why that allows us to do that. I don't know if there's so much to take in when we're fishing that you have to be completely focused. Do you think it might be something like that?
You know what? You saying it has just given me a small inkling as to what it might be. So there's obviously, when you've got a baby, you can play them white noise, right? You have these white noise machines. And I recently, usually I use a bit of background music on when I'm, especially deep into the magazine project, doing design, the layout design, something like that. I have some YouTube on the background. And not too long ago, or earlier last year, some of this sort of focus music or something come up. And it's not mundane, but it's quite, repetitive almost drone or something like that. I'm wondering if like the water, like the sound of the river or something, is like that white noise. It's white noise for adults. I like that. Maybe it is, no, maybe I'm going to tune into that one. Yeah, I think it could be that.
Yeah, the moment you said it, it suddenly, I knew what you were going to say because it suddenly made perfect sense from that point of view. So really, really interesting point. So what is the perfect day for you when you're out on the water?
Oh, let's have a think. I think, let's turn it from perfect day to perfect day and evening, like my camp out that I did. That's definitely something I'll be doing a little bit more moving forward. Again, now my daughter's getting a bit older, it's a bit more possible for us, is to get into the backcountry a bit more. We've got some spectacular hiking and mountains that are not. It's not the Alps here. It is very accessible. You don't need to be extremely fit or have all this, expensive equipment to actually enjoy the Pyrenees. So I think, my perfect trip would be to, fill a backpack up, have some tasty snacks. You can't go out there without snacks and a beer. Or I'm starting to enjoy a bit of whiskey these days, so maybe with a bit of that. And get up to one of these higher lakes. I mean, I've been looking on the map in my evenings on Google Maps quite healthily. We've got a lot of lakes around, so it would be to hike up to one of those, find a nice place to camp, cast a line, just enjoy being up in the Pyrenees. It's a really wonderful place.
That sounds absolutely perfect to me. And of course, you've got all those wonderful, wonderful cake shops as well, which are fantastic. And I must share with people a story when I was in Oleana that we got up very early. It was our last day and we thought, sorry, let's squeeze some extra fishing in before we had to go. Ray and I had to go to the airport. And we went into the coffee bar that we'd been having our breakfast in. Wasn't open, it was so early, but there was a coffee bar for the locals in there and it was espresso only, but I didn't realise that and asked him if I could have a cappuccino, and he looked as though his face looked as though I'd taken a dump on the floor of his cafe. So he made an espresso, went into the kitchen, came out and got a squirty cream, squirted that on the top and then handed it to me, and we all laughed afterwards. So that was quite amusing from that point of view. So be very careful about that if you're out there. But the food, the Catalan food and the Catalan people are absolutely fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, the food's incredible. Yeah, you've got the healthy side, you've got the not so healthy side. But the diet in general here is great. Price is good as well. But the people are super nice. We're been quite, moving out here. It's a small town where we live in comparison to where we have lived before. People do keep themselves a bit more. It's quite hard to, kind of meet people. I think it's also a bit of the culture here. It's very family orientated, but through like the kindergartens and stuff, we're starting to meet people. They're super nice people up here. It's like what you hear about, the Mediterranean in general. The people are great, the food's awesome. It's very pleasant. I feel very lucky to have found the place because we've travelled around a lot to get here.
That was going to be my next question, actually, because while we've been talking, you've mentioned New Zealand, you mentioned Barcelona. Of course, you're from the UK as well. Does that mean that you've found home, or are you nomadic by nature and this is sort of filling a bit of space while your daughter gets a little bit older?
It's I'm not sure. It's probably just the best answer I could give. So in a nutshell, I'm from the south coast of England, Hampshire. I grew up in Gosport between Portsmouth and Southampton. I was born just outside of Oxford. That's where my mum come from. But my dad from Swindon, he was in the military. So we moved down there and that's where we grew up, down on the coast. And I picked up or got into kiteboarding when I was like 14, 15. The area that I come from down there, it's super popular for windsurfing, kite surfing. And a lot of the sports kind of great people come from that region, just because it's a great place for water sports, South Coast. I got into it. I got sponsored in the UK pretty quickly, and then within 2 years I turned pro. I got sponsored up on paid contracts by a couple of American brands, and I was flown out to the USA when I was 18, I think, just before my 18th birthday, or just turned, I think, I can't remember, and travelled around the USA for a couple of years on a big 40-foot tour bus, which, looking back on it now, it was just crazy. It's like a movie. This big RV with bedrooms and the bathroom and, full-on kitchen in there. It was like a rock star tour bus that we travelled around on. So I got to see a lot of the states like that. Like the tours that I was going on was from about Texas or the Gulf of Mexico across to California, and then up the West Coast into Oregon, Washington, and then back down. So it was very Pacific Northwest style, outdoorsy, and I loved it. I absolutely loved all of that. I got out to Hawaii and stuff, and got to see a lot of the USA. And then as time went on, I got to venture a bit more around with kiteboarding. And then when I was about 20, 21, I had a really bad accident on a photo shoot on my foot, and we were in the Maldives, of all places. And I had never seen under the water, basically, in any of these places, Caribbean, Hawaii, Indian Ocean. And to get a bit of fitness back, I started to do a bit of snorkeling. And then I saw coral reefs and then just become fascinated. I mean, what a wonderful ecosystem down there. Which led on to basically, leaving kiteboarding as a career and then picking up my photography more. Got into filmmaking, made a documentary about coral reefs out there, and then, continued traveling, basically. I'd met my now fiance in the Maldives. She's from Germany, and she had a organization dealing with like sea turtles and climate change and projects on the small islands that are out there. But then we, over the last, we're going into 25, aren't we? So over the last 13, 14 years, we've traveled through Thailand, down into Australia, across to New Zealand, done parts of the South Pacific, and then moved back to Europe. And settled in Spain, basically. So is this where we're going to stay, to answer your question? I really like it, but I've still got a list of places I would love to experience for a number of different things, whether it's in the van or for fishing or for skiing or hiking. Canada is right up there for me. But I don't know. At the moment, we're actually quite content, staying put, and that's probably due to our daughter. It's can't complain. It's lovely here, and for everything we're interested in, like getting into the van and going out for like micro excursions these days, it is not short of an adventure here. Whether that's in the Pyrenees or in Europe, because it's just so accessible, it's fantastic. I love it, and I hadn't seen too much of Europe because I had spent, thankfully, a lot of time traveling outside of Europe. But I think Europe's wonderful.
I think the tour bus thing sounds as though it's a book in itself, so I probably won't go on to that. But do you think that sowed the seed for the life that you lead, and then subsequently with where your work is now and revolving around, like you say, micro excursions, longer trips, the van life, if that is the correct term? Do you think that's where that all started for you and it's flicked a switch on?
Yeah, 100%. I remember. So, I mean, there's two parts really that lead into where I am now. I think I've come full circle, basically, like where I started as, like a teenager. Down the beach, everyone had a van because that's how you transport your windsurfing or your kite surfing gear. So all the friends I had, they had Volkswagen vans that they built beds in. They were carpenters or builders or tradesmen. That was just the general people that I had mates as, and they had just self-converted their vans to a super just basic level because it basically fulfilled the, that thing of being able to go out on the weekend and, You don't need a bed and breakfast or a hotel. One, you can't afford it, and two, it's more fun in the van. So that was what I saw early on. However, it never really appealed to me. I was like 16. I had 17, I had a small Peugeot that I would lay the seats down and try and sleep in there with all my kites. But yeah, being on the road in the USA, that opened my eyes very quickly as to what's really going on out there. I was rubbing shoulders with, professional photographers and journalists and entrepreneurs who had companies and just super interesting people that were just living differently or pursuing life in a different way to what I was encouraged as a child to pursue. In the UK, it's very stereotypical. You go to school, you go to college, you go to uni, you go and get a job, and then you get your house and all this. And there were people in the States that were like, it's quite funny now I can say it, being a bit older. There was a guy who became a good friend. He was like 30, 35, and he lived in his van at the beach in California, Venice Beach in California. And when he told me that, I thought, oh man, how can you do that? You sound homeless. But now it's like, well, totally understand that. He was a kite surf instructor, having the time of his life at the beach. When the winter kicked in, he would go inland, go to the mountains, go skiing. And if you're into that, kind of pursuit of life, it's there if you want it. But really the encouragement from back home within my family was, go traditional, go safe, do it the way you're meant to do it. And so I was like torn between these two worlds of, that sounds really fun and that's everything that I kind of want to go down. And then, when you come home from a trip, it's like, okay, I'll go back to school or, go do this. So I don't know. So yes, it planted the seed very early on as to ultimately, I think, who I wanted to be or who I am. And thankfully the show is still on the road.
Nice. And I'm thinking about what you're saying about the kite surfing and the surfing and how fly fishing. I have friends who have vans. Toby, my friend Nick's just bought one. How these things work really nicely with fishing too. And for you, that fishing, does that become a result of being, as you've described, just a little bit older now, that fits in with that lifestyle at certainly a slightly different stage of your life now?
Yeah, I think, for me, it's very interest-based as well. I am super interested in nature. I love it. I think the biggest thing that I'm taking out of fly fishing is that, and it's a very small understanding, but of the flies, the bugs, the pattern throughout the seasons. I mean, that's wonderful. What a nice thing to understand. So in the van, what really works is how small your gear packs down. My fly fishing gear does live in my van, and the net is hung up on the back, and the rods, they slide in at the top, and it's all neat, and it's there whenever you need it. And that's nice. I like that. As I said, I've done some sports where you've got quite a lot of bulky kind of stuff, like kiteboarding, big bags, big boards. And I do like gear, like, the best of us. And I love the fiddliness, the little bits that you get with fly fishing. And that is, there's so many little bits, isn't there, with fishing that kind of fun. I mean, like now we're off season, aren't we? I mean, we've got nowhere to fish here because it's all closed. You get your vice out, you do some tying, you watch a video or two online. It's nice. It just, it's, I just got to say, it's relaxing again. It's the thing to switch off with for me. But no, it does go very well with the vans. And is that how your friends keep it as well? They've got a little space in their van where the gear kind of slots away?
I think a combination of all of them, really. Nick's just bought his one, and so he's sort of just getting into it, whereas Toby's had his for years, and I've been on trips. We went to Scotland, stopped off en route and everything. I like how everything fits in. It becomes almost an extension of a fishing vest in some respect. So the van becomes that. And then, of course, if you have the advantage of being able to sleep as well, then that ties into that really well. And I wanted to ask you about that a little bit, because do you detect that there is much of a scene of that with anglers that use their camper vans to go travel? Are you detecting it in your world?
Here, I'm not sure here. I think people stay very local. The locals stay very local here, in the fishermen, that is. I know that, here in Spain or the Pyrenees, people travel for running or skiing with their vans. Fishing, maybe it's because I don't know many people here on the fishing front, but I'm not sure. I think people tend to stay a little bit local here, so they enjoy it. You don't have to travel far. Maybe that's the thing here. But I know in the UK, I've got some friends that are into their fishing as well. But they're specifically designing their van around where rods can go. I know that. It eliminates the need, like on a car, where you have those long tubes that go on the top. Because the van's already so long, you can keep all that inside. So that's an advantage. But I think it goes. It does go hand in hand, really, doesn't it? Because it's like a Swiss Army knife, a van. You can, change it out for the seasons or whatever kind of thing you're off to go and do. In my case, I just leave most of the stuff in the van. I'm a bit lazy when it comes to that. But it does. I think it goes hand. It's like, I can remember again, my father and my brother, they, would take their tents out, and especially on the coast, all the fishermen, they're down there with their tents, their bivvies all night. So I don't know why couldn't imagine the van not being super popular within the scene. How about you? You don't have a van though, do you?
Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit more off
Nice.
mic. And I have, given that you sent me the magazines, given some other things in my life, that I'm very, very close to something, very, very close. And so I think, yes, I like the idea of it. I like being outside. I'm doing a road trip up to Scotland with my dog in April. And I like the idea of the two of us doing this. He's getting a little bit older. He'll be 9 in April. And I want to do at least one with him that we travel, sleep, share a mattress, and see how we get on. So, and to me, a van would work really well from that point of view. And I kind of like that idea of it all as that sort of mobile headquarters. And because my life revolves around fishing, it may be I'm going salmon fishing on a local river that I can go down and make it a little bit more than it is. And it's special already, but I wonder if there is a way to make that just that little bit more special. So yes, I'm getting very, very close, and I've nearly pulled the trigger on something yesterday. And then I may be phoning somebody about one after we're done as well. So it's getting it right and understanding it. And I really want to experience and be closer to fishing in another way as well. And we all have this dream, don't we, of waking up next to a river, which generally in the UK is not the easiest thing to do. But at least if we can be relatively close to one. And I like the idea of the waders in the van. I like the idea of the tackle in the van. I've got one of these Yeti big things to store all my stuff in that
Nice.
I know exactly where it would go. My dog can go in there. All of those sorts of things work incredibly well for me and the life that I lead. So, I think probably watch this space is probably the best thing. Could be midlife crisis part 33, but I think as I look at my life and the life that I lead, I think it could work really, really well. So we'll see how that happens, but it's going to be a very interesting, fun one. I've been glued over the Christmas period to all sorts of wonderful sites and learning a lot. And of course, your fantastic magazine has been a colossal inspiration. And I'm segueing beautifully into that because having read it, the 2 copies that you sent and we exchanged for listeners, we'd been talking a little while, Alex, actually, haven't we? And somebody who's doing something similar but in a different sphere has been really, really nice to chat with somebody about it. But as I'm talking to you today, I'm getting a really good idea of you and the artistic side, the outdoors side, was bringing a magazine a natural progression for you? And you said you did films as well. So all of these things sort of tie in, but was this a way of expressing your love for something in a different way?
Yeah, so I did leave a part out actually that when I was kiteboarding, going back to this old story, for about 2 years I was never that good. Like I was at a good level. I won a few competitions, but I wasn't like a competition rider, we would call them. I worked in the media, so I got my sponsors because I was good at writing stories and working with photographers, getting the pictures. And I was doing a lot of promotion in magazines to expose the sport of kiteboarding to new audiences. That was that's what I loved to do back then. So I was working with print mags, and this was 2006 to 2009 was like my kind of prime in the sport. And I had something in print somewhere in the world every month for about 2 years. Working really, really hard. And this was before social media, before Facebook, before Instagram. These things were in there. Don't know even if Instagram was developed at that time. Facebook was, in its infancy. I never uploaded a single thing to Facebook. I can remember that. So the way for us to, kind of expose work for our sponsors and tell stories was through magazines. So I wasn't in the publishing, I was definitely in the photography and the writing side of things. Then, yes, over the next kind of 10, 15 years, I got into video production, mainly corporate video production. That's where the money was. That's what brought me to Barcelona for a lot of work for corporates. And then, then into the magazine. So to come back into print now is like, that's that full circle that I mentioned earlier. And it feels very nice to, especially today, 2024, 2025, to be working on something analog. It's like, I think you'll really appreciate this as well, is that it's something that we had. I mean, me growing up and you as a young man, like that's something that was in our, in our early time. And then for me, it feels like I went on this big trip with video and around the world, and I just kind of left everything 10 or 15 years ago. So to come back to something like a print mag now, it's like, I'm kind of picking up where I left off. And that's what it feels like for me. And I love, now I'm really kind of settled with the magazine. I'm getting into the more of a steady rhythm of pumping out the magazines. We did 3 last year for the first time ever. Before that, it was two per year. It's just a really nice workflow in today's kind of crazy world. And yes, as you said, I've done a lot of video work and a lot of photography. And I have, done quite a bit of contract work for different brands for photography and videography. And I love creating video mostly. It's very time consuming though. But I've got a bunch of different cameras. I'm shooting a lot of film these days, actually, which are you guys publishing film? I was trying to have a look through the mag that you'd sent me.
We have had some bits in there, actually. Yes, John Grindle's taken some film for us, shots of beautiful grayling shots and some other bits and pieces. I think Sam Baycock sent me something from a trip in New Zealand. So we do have it. And I think one of our covers actually may well have been real film as well. So that is certainly part of it as well. So yes, I like that. And that fits in with the analog things as well rather nicely. So yes, I'm a fan of that. And do you find then that putting that together, was it, because I realized when I put the magazine or announced the magazine was coming, that you thought, right, well, I can't go back now. And I didn't want to anyway. But did you think long and hard? Because mine was almost a impulse reaction. And we've been obviously putting out for 5-6 years an online magazine. So it seemed the natural progression to do that. But did you think long and hard, or was it a gut reaction?
That's interesting. And when did you start publishing online?
We're about six years old, I think.
Okay, and that started as an online, did it?
No, but I had 6 years before that with something called Eat, Sleep, Fish. So we ran that. So I sort of learnt my trade during that time. And then I thought, well, magazines are folding, so I just can't help myself, and wanted to see if we could do it in our own tiny little way. So that was the way that we looked at it. But it was a gut reaction to do that. And there was some thought in it, but possibly not as deeply as it could have been.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Well, so Advanture started as a digital. The first one, I had built a mailing list of a great 200 people that were going to be excited to get the first copy. And we launched that 3 weeks before the whole COVID kind of thing kicked off. Yeah, so early 2020. So it was digital only. It had a bad logo. It was like 40 pages in a digital flip book. The layout sucked. For sure, it's full of typos. It was, let's call it a prototype. And anyway, we launched that out into the world. And, it was, my favorite word in the world is serendipity. It was perfect timing for us because everyone was obviously sat at home. They couldn't travel in their camper vans anymore. So what did they do? They downloaded Advanture magazine, and that kind of just kicked off the mag from the get-go. I published the second one fully from lockdown. It was super strict, super hard here. When I was living in Barcelona, we couldn't leave the apartment, only for hospital or shopping. That was it. Super strict. So the second issue was completely built from, my spare bedroom back then. Fast forward in a little bit. We had a year of this kind of on and off lockdown situation, didn't we? And I pitched to the audience that had grown to about 10,000 on the Instagram in just 1 year. Like, what do you think about a print mag idea? And I'm not thinking back on it. I'm not quite sure what kind of got me interested in doing that. I think I tell people that it was more that we'd been on our devices for like a year, like heavily. And I was kind of sick and tired of it. But there must have been something more to it than that, because it was not on my radar at all. So after 1 year, we introduced, it was by issue 4 at that point. So issue 4 had been released as a digital, and then I took that back to the computer and then I printed, I think, like 100 copies of it on a print-on-demand service in the UK. And yeah, we managed to sell all of those pretty quickly. And I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. People actually want to buy the products. I should say it was free, our digital magazine, before that. So to build the audience, to build the interest, gauge the interest, I should say. Yeah, it was a free distribution magazine online. You just had to pay with your email address to join the mailing list. And then all of a sudden I got people paying, I think it was about £6 or £7 for a small print mag, super thin. It was about the size of a National Geographic, so like your travel size. But yeah, that was another, upwards curve in the learn process, was to take a digital product and then start printing it. Not just printing it, packaging it, having the whole website to sell it on. It was like turned into a physical product for the first time. I'd never had a physical product. So there was a lot to learn very quickly about, that whole side of things. And that was super interesting. But yeah, it started as a digital and then morphed into this print mag. And then it did go into a redesign, which is the copies that you now see. But yeah, those early editions were quite rough.
Really interesting what you say there, because in effect we were digital as well, and it was free as well. And I think that's the difference, because I think, and you'll be testament to that, it's an incredibly difficult marketplace to operate in, particularly fishing, because it is so small. But I obviously don't know the van side of it as well, but that makes it incredibly challenging. But having a following makes life so much easier from that point of view, to be able to bring something and discovering that there is actually some appetite for it as well, which is even more pleasing. And COVID, like you say, was for us really, really, if there is a way to say that, but it certainly helped what we were doing. But also there was the double-edged side of that as well, because as a result, there was a boom in print media, generally including books and many things with it. And print cost and paper cost particularly have become quite tasty, haven't they?
I wouldn't know the prices before, but yeah, it's definitely not cheap. I mean, that is our outlay over here. Is print and shipping. I mean, shipping is the one I've seen increase in costs a lot. But yeah, it's not. But that's the thing, though, is we're not printing, and it's been really a delight to go through your magazine as well, because it's not. I mean, it's a collectible. It's not a typical magazine that people. Would associate with, really. I mean, it's a lovely story, actually. I was sent a magazine by the editor of Like the Wind, named Simon. It's an English running magazine. I'm not sure, an independent. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. And he had seen these early issues of Advanture that I'd been working on. And he's like, hey, look, it's awesome to see another person in indie publishing, and I make the running magazine. I've seen you're into running. Can I send you a copy of my magazine? I was like, yeah, I'd love to see. And I remember opening the cardboard mailer. There's a bit of weight to this magazine. And first thing, you get hit by the smell. Second thing, you pull the print out. You can feel it. It's different. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. 15 years ago, when I was looking at magazines, they were, thin, they were glossy, they might kick around for a bit and get dog ears, and then they go in the bin. And I hadn't even finished taking his magazine out of the cardboard mailer, and I was like, oh man, I got to take Advanture magazine back to the drawing board and create this, because this is already an experience that I have not experienced before. And it's the same with yours and the paper that we use now and things like this. I think the cost is, I don't know. I'm happy to pay the cost, because that's it, to keep something like this premium print experience going in today's world. It's like, it's an honor that people want to buy it, but yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah, it is, and that's the wonderful thing about it, isn't it? I'm exactly the same. That we have some wonderful loyal subscribers and people who buy copies singly as well, and that's been really pleasing all the way through, that those people have stuck with us. But there's still that nervousness, isn't there? When A, I worry about the cover that I've chosen, and B, I worry when it hits the streets that people will like it. Will they like it? And that's the big thing. And it sometimes can keep me awake a little bit, because you want people to enjoy it. And I'm sure I'm like you, that I'm already on to the spring version. So the winter one's been forgotten about, yet they're still going out to people. But you do worry about it, don't you? And is that a sign, do you think, of caring, A, about your readership, but also caring about the product? Because, like you say, we're charging people for it, that you want them to feel that they're getting the maximum value for money.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I just saw your latest cover, the illustration, and it looks. I love that. I love that. What you can do with these magazines, it's not all about photography and real life. You can blend it with illustration and art. And I love the cover that you pulled off. Super minimalistic. What have you got? Like 2 colors on there, red and black.
Yep.
It's lovely. I love it. Really cool.
Yeah.
And that makes me want to do a illustration cover for our next one again, because it's been a while since we've had one. But yeah, with regards to, sorry, I completely forgot the mark of your question there. Was it about moving on from one issue to the next, or the readership?
When that new one's about to hit the streets, worrying what the reaction will be, worrying if people love it. Yeah. Do you suffer with that a little bit?
I do. Yeah, you've got to. I think if you get too complacent, then I think you just don't carry the. What would it be? Completely swallowed my own word. I think if you don't respect what you're kind of putting out to the people, then yeah, it could consume you a bit. You could get a bit too confident with it. No, I am the biggest judge of my own work. Slows me down a lot sometimes, most of the time. it has to be. I want it to be the best, especially when it comes to print, because you get that one shot, don't you? And if spelling mistake is one thing, but if it's some bad piece of layout, or you've missed something that's not aligned or is there, and it's even more glaringly obvious for me than a typo. But yes, I do worry about if each issue or the next issue, how well it'd be received. But I've come to feel very encouraged by like our core readership. Like you said, there's like this baseline, this core person who's been there for since day one, basically. And I try to keep as many conversations going, even if it's just the odd message on mainly social media with these people. Just check in. They're my friends these days, and they tell me how much they love it popping through the door. And there's a few great layers to this. There's the person who keeps it in the original mailer so that it doesn't get tatty. There's a few of those, especially when it goes into the van. It can get knocked around and kind of fall apart a bit. So you've got a few people that keep them in their original mailers to keep them nice and tidy. I love that. There's people that really do. They plan a weekend trip, or even if it's a night or 2 nights, just to get out into the van to go somewhere, make it comfortable, sit back and read the next issue. The amount of people that tag their new issue on so we use Instagram a lot, tag the new issue when it comes through their letterbox. There's there's genuine excitement for these people getting the print mag, and that's the ultimate payoff for me. 100% is that people actually want a printed magazine today. And there's something that I've learned very recently, actually, which when I heard it or figured it out, it just blew my mind. There's obviously people like us who grew up with magazines, and it's probably been a long time since we've had a subscription. And now with the resurgence of print and retro and nostalgia things, we might be getting a print subscription again. And that's super exciting. But then there's a younger person that has never had a magazine in print before. And they're writing to me and they're like, this is our first magazine we've ever had. And it's like, whoa. And when I heard that for the first time, I was like, I actually almost can't comprehend that, because obviously there's been a whole shift in technology and trends and interests in the last decade, just over a decade, mainly due to social media, I think, and just the internet getting more advanced, that these younger people, they've not had a mag. And when I heard that, it's like, wow, well, thank you for choosing my magazine. Like, that's the experience that I want to be able to give. And it's like, have you considered that before? Or
in the sense of, it's lovely you mentioned about the tagging that, I'm sure you're the same. I never ask anyone to do anything. And that's deeply moving when that happens. And it's hard to explain. And regarding the podcast as well, a lot of people write to me about that. And it's lovely to interact and be part of something and to create a community as a result of it. I've got to do a quick plug because we're going to be in Orvis in Stockbridge in January as well, with beer and pizza or food or whatever it is as well. And we've got a bunch of people coming along to that. And that part of it, to me, it moves beyond the magazine itself. And like you've said, that you end up becoming friends with these people who read the magazine, and then people are put in touch with each other. That's really important to me. So it sort of transcends that to a completely different level. And I think that's what I like so much about it. And I like the people that you meet along the way. And it may be just fleetingly, but sometimes it develops into something else. That's what I love about it, I think. And that's why I think I will continue to do it for as long as people want to bear with it as well. Because, it's nice to do it feels like for me that there is something that you can do some good with. I don't know if that resonates with you.
I think so, yeah. It's, I think the best thing on a personal level for people like you and I is we can print whatever we want, can't we? You tell the truth, basically. That's nice. I think that when you put something on the internet, for example, an opinion or even a body of work, something that you've worked really hard for. You could have a lot of people that just don't respect other people or appreciate you or your work, or just want to be a bit of a dick on that day. And it can, they can kind of put you down. That can be a big drag. But I think something like the magazine is you've got, these people that have readers, they become part of, there's a community. Now, I think that's a very weak word for what we've actually got going on here. We've got people that are, they're spending their money and they're spending their time to really, pick up and read every word of what we're picking out. And I think that becomes, that there's a great responsibility there, but also a great opportunity that, you can be creative with your words, photography. And there's people there that are they really want it. Whereas, compared to like online, it's such a disposable place. I mean, that's what I feel it is. Big responsibility, I think, Mag, in terms of that. Yeah.
Well, that's been lovely to geek out with you a little bit about that and what it means to us. And as I said, I felt an affinity the moment I saw what you were doing, and then saw the magazine as well. So congratulations, not advertorial. It is just about life and how it revolves around vans, travelling, and the experiences that go with it. So please be sure to check that out if you feel that might be of interest to you. We're going to start, we've been going over an hour now, and I wanted to chat about the van. So let's say you've got somewhere, let's imagine that you can transport your van anywhere on a fishing trip. Where would it go?
It's a really cool question. Where would it go? Where would I take it? I think I would need to go back to the States. I think I've got, I want to go and explore like Maine and New Hampshire and go and have a look all up that way. I never got up there. And it looks fun. Yeah, that looks like I don't know if it's very van friendly. Sorry, I think you need to float planes and stuff to get around up there, don't you? That would be cool. But maybe also to actually go back to New Zealand. That's a fantastic place, isn't it? And have you been to New Zealand?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Beautiful, isn't it? That is very van or empowering down there. To have a camper van down in New Zealand, that's his way of life. And I think maybe New Zealand, but because I haven't been, I think Maine would have to be on the top of my list there. Yeah.
Very good choices, very good. And if you haven't seen it it's for listeners too, but Alex as well, if you haven't seen it, check out Chase and Amy Bartee, Bartee, and their VW trip from, I think, funnily enough, they're in Maine, and they travel to Montana in it, and it's a fabulous piece of film. Absolutely. I think there's 2 or 3 that they've done. I think they do one in Maine as well, but it's absolutely fantastic and is deeply inspiring. And I think I might go and watch some of that. But yeah, that's worth a look as well. We're going to ask you the dreaded question. We have a playlist on Spotify, the Fly Culture Road Trip playlist. Can you give me a song for the playlist, please, Alex?
I'm really bad at this. Now, I know that you did mention before we started recording about my new Eminem CD. Yeah, I'm starting to get back into kind of this. There's a few different things like from the 90s into early 2000s music that I've just completely forgotten about. So it's really unassociated. Don't pick any of these for your playlist, but I do enjoy like Limp Bizkit and Eminem just because that brings out those old songs and memories and stuff as a teenager. But you know what I'm really enjoying actually is like Blur these days. Again, something I haven't listened to and I wasn't a fan of when I was a kid. So is there a Blur song? And I listened to this with my daughter in the car on the way to kindergarten. She's starting to learn all the words. So actually that helps me narrow it down to The Universal by Blur. It's a nice song.
Beautiful choice. Very, very good choice. Well, this has been a fantastic chat, but before we end, can you give us details of how people can connect with you, how they can find Advanture as well, before we close things down?
Yeah, wonderful. The best place to go is the website, which is www.advanture magazine. So it's like adventure, but you lose the E and you put the A in there for the van. Advanturemagazine.com, but we can be found on Instagram, where I'm probably the most active, just because it's very easy to be able to chat with people, see their pictures, share mine. But yeah, to buy a magazine, best place is Advanture Magazine. But we do have a number of boutique outlets in the UK, which can be found on our website on the stockist pages. So that'd be great if you want to drop into an actual bricks and mortar store and go and support those. And we're also stocked in WH Smiths around the country, so you can pick up a copy there.
Fantastic. Alex, it's been wonderful to chat with you, and we're going to chat some more once we switch off. But thank you so much for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast today.
You're welcome, and I look forward to seeing you in Spain.
I think there's a good chance of that. I think we're heading back in October next year, so I'll keep you posted with that. But everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture podcast. I try and take these podcasts in as many directions as I possibly can, and I love the idea of the link between the vans and fishing. I like what Alex is doing with his life, where he's living in the mountains so close to a river with fishing on tap, and learning a little bit about his life and his backstory. So I hope you've enjoyed this as much as me. As ever, there'll never be any charge for these. And of course, there'll be some more podcasts coming very, very soon. Thank you so much for listening.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.